So, a little bit of extra context now for you, though, ladies and gentlemen, around we should be keeping an eye on what's going on in Rhyl at the moment. Again, Rhyl, quiet town where you think of old people going to retire, right? If you're not familiar with Rhyl in North Wales, along the coast, very, very nice place. In the summer 2 years ago, no, about 3 years ago, summer about 3 years ago, me and my dad went up, mentioned that in the last episode, and it was really, really nice. Just really, really nice. It's a really, really nice place, especially in the summer. Very quiet. You'd think very low on crime, not a lot of people, right? And we mentioned that there was basically what was a foreign rape gang operating in Rhyl. 4 people, as I mentioned before, Mustafa Iqbal, Mohammed Usman Ashad, Zayul Badsha, and Jaswinder Singh, right? Operating what was basically, or what's been described as a child trafficking ring. I call it a child rape ring because they've also been charged with rape and violations of the Modern Slavery Act. They holding what we assume would be a teenage girl, because that's the people who are implicated in this as well, the victims, in some kind of slavery environment, like, you're holding them against their will. And then the other one is human trafficking, right? So child trafficking as well. As I mentioned before, 4.3% of Rhyl's southwest population is what they call Asian, right? Asian being the euphemism often, right? To try and get away from the actual reality of what's going on, right? They'll call people Asian in order to try and obfuscate from the fact that they're predominantly Pakistani or they're predominantly Bangladeshi or whatever it might be, right? Often unfairly grouping in other groups of Asians who have nothing to do with this. Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, right? All of these other people that really have nothing to do with this. But what this means, right, according to this person, I'll put the post up in the description for you to go and read this yourself. This is really, really alarming. Is that this guy's come up with a stat of what this means is that 1 in 24 adult Asian men in the area have been arrested for child sexual abuse. Now, already that is staggeringly high, obviously, but it gets even more alarming when you go to the ratio, when you filter specifically on Pakistani, Indian, and Bangladeshi men, it goes to 1 in 3. It goes to 1 in 3, 33.3%. That is really, really staggering. That is really, really staggering. And in many ways, as I go through a thread now, seems to be even worse than some areas elsewhere in the country, like Telford. Telford, for example, as this guy put in the comments, but I'll go through some of the others. This guy on X has made a big thread of all of this, which I'll read out some of them now, and you can go look at it yourself. If the numbers are true, truly staggering, truly staggering. So in Telford, for example, you had 1 in 8 named as suspects, 1 in 11 arrested, but only 7 in total were convicted. But here's a massive thread, right? There's a massive thread. So Rotherham, for example, 1 in 38 adult Muslim men in Rotherham have been convicted for grooming gang crimes on children as young as 11. All of these have articles cited, by the way. I have not gone and read all of them at this moment in time. Some of them are from The Guardian, some of them are from The Independent, some of them are from the BBC. So you can go and read these all for yourself. All of the articles are in this thread, which you can go and read. Rochdale, approximately 1 in 137 adult Muslim men were convicted. Convicted, mind you, this is convicted in this one. As one victim said, some of the men involved were arrested, tried and found guilty, but not all. So odds are the actual perpetrators, the actual number would be a lot lower. It would be 1 in a number that's a lot lower because the number of people convicted have been a lot lower. Telford. The Telford inquiry reveals that during Operation Chalice, approximately 1 in 8 adult Muslim men in Telford were identified as suspects and 1 in 11 were arrested. So I will pull up this article a bit quick and just give you a little bit more info into it. So this is from The Independent, as I mentioned, because Telford was in the previous comment that we went through before. So it'd be pertinent to bring it up now. I hate it. Why won't they let me get rid of the... Oh, screw it. Okay, right. More than 1,000 children were abused by sexual grooming gangs in Telford during decades of failing by police and authorities. An independent inquiry found that rape, sexual abuse, brainwashing, drugging and other crimes had, quote, thrived unchecked in the Shropshire town since the 1970s. Similar findings were issued following the 2014 report into gang activity in Rotherham and investigations in other towns, and the Telford report said that child sexual exploitation still exists today and is prevalent across the country as a whole. So here we go. The inquiry found that even after a West Mercia police operation was launched in 2009 that resulted in several prosecutions, the Force and Local Council said, quote, scaled down their specialist child sexual exploitation teams to virtually zero to save money. At least one victim of grooming gangs in Telford, Lucy Lowe, 16-year-old, who was pregnant, was murdered, and then her death was used as a threat to keep other victims quiet. Mentioned before the young girl, Charlene Downs, whose media reported that she was actually ground up after being murdered and put into the kebab meat in one of the restaurants, right? We're dealing with disgusting animals here, okay? So there was another victim, 13-year-old Becky Watson, was killed in 2002 after an unexplained car accident. Countless children were sexually assaulted and raped. They were deliberately humiliated and degraded. They were shared and trafficked. They were subjected to violence and their families were threatened. They live in fear and their families were forever changed. So, I'm just trying to see if I can find the actual stat from this. 1,200-page report found that the abuse was not hidden, and police and the schools and the council had been aware of it since the 1990s. Victims were berated for their lifestyle choices and blamed for putting themselves at risk. Just trying to... I don't believe there's actually a stat in here, but this is just more so the context around what was happening, unless I've accidentally skipped over it. Anyway, that's more of the information of what was going on in Telford, but allegedly then that's resulted in 1 in 8 Muslim men in Telford being identified as suspects, and 1 in 11 were arrested. Oldham, you have approximately 1 in 86 Muslims in Oxford have been convicted for grooming gang crimes. Sentence remarks reveals the girls were subjected to horrific torture and abuse. See if it says anything in this one. I know a lot of them, the guy explains later on, as said, is based off of a different document, so maybe this is just more of the context around them. But you can see here, ladies and gentlemen, these are just patterns. These are patterns that people are noticing and that oftentimes are being imprisoned for talking about. And that's why when you see that the ratio in this instance, when it goes to 1 in 3, that you could pass a Pakistani, an Indian, or Bangladeshi man in Rhyl, right? And you have a 1 in 3 chance of that person being arrested for child sexual abuse. That is extremely alarming. That is extremely, extremely alarming. And if it's already that bad, we have to then ask, what do we have to gain by allowing in any more? What do we have to gain by allowing in any more? In my opinion, it's a massive nail in the coffin of multiculturalism and diversity. But as I said, multiculturalism, diversity have all come from the brain of Tony Blair, one of the most evil people that's ever existed.